Our Steve on Your Side consumer team spent a while digging into stadium food prices this month. Have you ever noticed how expensive it is to buy a hot dog at a game here? What's the cheapest you think you can find? Hint, it's the Broncos, I think. As venues across the country are lowering their food prices for fans, we found a few deals here, but mostly big numbers that rival the price you paid for a ticket if you're trying to feed a family. 9 News consumer investigator Steve Stager will be here in a moment to talk about more of the specifics, but here's a broader look at what they found.
On a Friday afternoon in Lodo, we found two very distinct things.
$8 for like a Coke.
A whole lot of Cubs jerseys.
I don't know, maybe like 20 bucks.
And budgets.
Well, I don't come starving. Maybe a beer, maybe an app, and if I get my footlong, I get my footlong.
This is not groundbreaking journalism here, but food costs more inside the walls of our 3 sports venues than it does outside.
About $16 for some of those beers inside and about $16 for a 12-pack outside.
We posed the question to an expert anyway.
Why is stadium food so damn expensive?
There's a couple of reasons, and of course the biggest one is because once you go in those doors, the stadium has a monopoly on your consumer spending, right?
Victor Matheson is a sports economist.
Margins on food inside of stadiums are gigantic. Margins on alcohol also gigantic.
Steve on Your Side looked at concession prices. A regular hot dog at Coors Field is $7.49, only a penny more up the road at Ball Arena. But a bag of chips is $6 at Ball Arena, $3.35 at Coors Field. At Coors Field, we spotted popcorn selling for $9.69. At Ball Arena, it was $8.50. And at Mile High,
we've got our faves menu that's $5, nachos and the hot dogs and the water.
Fan favorites, like water, are $5. Popcorn, pretzels, soda, they're all $5 too.
I think some people are getting the idea that you really don't want to give people sticker shock on things that they really know what the price is, right?
Sports owners across the country are leaning into this cheaper food philosophy. The Atlanta Falcons offer refillable $2 soda and $5 beers and say concession sales are up.
We know there's a sweet spot there. You don't want to ruin someone's night out at the Nuggets. They're dropping big money on tickets and things just because they think they've been gouged by what ultimately is one small part of their whole entertainment night.
While some things are getting cheaper, Matheson says some stadium food reflects another trend in sporting events.
Over the past several decades, we've seen Major League Sports move from a situation where you're trying to get as many people into the stadium as possible to a world where we're limiting the number of people in the stadium, but we're significantly increasing the price and amenities for the upper few.
He says owners want to make impressions.
No longer is it nachos and hot dogs and the basics. Now it's about the experience.
That experience on display at Mile High this week, where the Broncos rolled out a new menu, including a 3-pound brookie, a brownie cookie, Wagyu beef meatballs, and jackalope mac and cheese. Suffice it to say, that stuff costs more than the $5 water.
You have those facets that we talked about of quality and variety. I think when you have that quality item, people are willing to pay for that.
If you're not willing,
the biggest thing to tell people, don't go in that stadium hungry and thirsty because then they've got you.
Yeah, Steve, I just love this story. I'm frugal, so I always buy stuff outside and then bring it in. But
oh yeah,
this gives you a great perspective. This is expensive to go to these games.
Well, and we'll talk about that too. We're going to talk about that in the 11 o'clock hour because I knew you could do that at Coors Field. I didn't know that you could do that at another stadium. How's that for a tease?
Oh, there you go.
We'll talk about that one. But the part of the reason we did this story is it's getting more and more expensive to get into the game. I think the average Broncos ticket, according to StubHub data, is something like $300 and some now. You see more and more, especially as our teams like the Avalanche and the Nuggets have gotten better, those ticket prices are going up. We're seeing Ball Arena kind of make some plans to do some improvements to the arena there, make all these higher end amenities. So the thought is like, are we starting to price out everyday people who want to come and see a game?
Right.
And what we found was if you want to go and you don't, or you make the poor decision to not eat before you walk in the door,
right,
you're going to pay quite a bit.
The other big thing that's missing there, I think a lot of people get big time sticker shock when they see beer and alcohol prices at the games.
Oh yeah, let's talk about beer, right? This one's a tough one to track because beer comes in all shapes and sizes. So let's talk domestic draft beer. Draft beer was the cheapest way to go in our survey of things, and let's break it down by the ounce. So we found out that Coors Field and Mile High were both selling domestic beer about 55 cents an ounce compared to Ball Arena, where domestic draft beer was about 70 cents an ounce.
Wow.
So both Coors Field and Ball Arena sell their domestic drafts in 20 ounces, so it'll cost you $14 at Ball Arena, a little over $11 at Coors Field. Perhaps you're getting a break maybe because Coors is on the name.
Yeah, big
I don't
break.
know. Mile High, we spotted an American draft beer, which is domestic,
Sure.
right? For $8.85. The stadium did tell us they sell it in 16-ounce portions, so that was right on track with that 55 cents an ounce. If you're looking for cheap beers, the best bet is before the game. Aramark told us that if you go into the stadium before the game, before kickoff, they have $5 beers at select stations
Really?
all over the place.
Did not know that.
Coors Field, the rooftop, offers $3 12-ounce beers 2 hours before the game.
That one is no secret.
Yeah. Oh, really? Yeah.
That's a popular.
I didn't know that one. But who's getting there 2 hours before the game?
Well, a lot of Rockies fans who are not really Rockies fans, and
But then you run the risk of if you're getting there 2 hours early,
Yeah.
then you're going to want to eat during the game
Yeah.
probably, right? And
It's
you gotta
risky.
pay for the high food prices.
that's why the ticket is so cheap. though,
Yeah, is
Steve.
that how it works?
All right, so talking about high food prices.
Yep.
Did you find some really expensive items too?
Yeah, a couple of items that we pointed out there directly in the story. The brookie, the Broncos brookie, that 3
Yeah, that looked delicious.
pounds. Look at that sucker. It's a cookie, and it's a Rice Krispie treat, and it's a brownie. This was right around
You're sharing this, I hope, right?
$28. It was one of the highest priced items we saw. Supposedly that thing, by the way, you're sharing it, 4 to 5 people. The Jackalope Bratwurst, which I don't look at that.
Yeah.
thing. It is a bratwurst with mac and cheese on top of it and what appear to be tortilla chips inside. I don't know how you eat that thing. That thing was like close to $29.
So you didn't test all this out for the story?
I was not there on the day
that
of
was a
this
missed
fancy.
opportunity, Steve.
You saw if you watched closely in the piece, you could see Mike Kliss walking through with a whole plate full of food. So he tried it out for us. If you're looking to do things, like kind of the non-alcoholic way, $19, something like that, for mocktails.
Wow.
At Mile High.
That's pricey.
Yeah. Most expensive food item at Ball Arena was a loaded baked potato for $17.
Okay.
Okay.
Making it home for one?
Get all, like a baked. How much is a potato at the store?
Less than $1.
Most expensive food item at Coors Field, that they sent to us at least, was the monster nachos with carnitas for $14.49.
Awesome. Well, this is great, Steve. Just to kind of dive into your reporting a bit more, we're planning to do this, I think, every Tuesday with you.
Yeah, we are.
So this will be great.
We'll pick a big story. We'll go in depth on it. By the way, next hour we're going to look more at more of the teams across the country that are doing deals like this. We're going to see what's for sale across the country. We'll look at some hacks like we talked about. What's that one other stadium I didn't know about where you could bring food inside? And I want to hear what your questions are. So you can text them to us at 303-871-1491. I'll do the best to answer them coming up in the 11 o'clock show.
All right, Steve, thanks for being on our side.
Happy to be here.
Appreciate it as always, buddy.
Yeah.